Hey everyone, ready to dive into some UAE VAT law with me today?
Always happy to talk taxes.
Okay, so today we're tackling VAT exemptions, which, let's be honest, are way more exciting than they sound.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Tons of hidden gems in there that could save businesses a bunch of money.
Exactly. And that's what we're all about here, right? Helping you navigate the UAE's financial landscape. So, before we get lost in the details, what's the one thing every business owner in the UAE absolutely needs to know about these VAT exemptions?
Okay, well, first off, you got to understand what an exempt supply actually means. Basically means you're selling something, could be a good or service, and you don't charge VAT on it.
Sounds pretty good so far.
Right. But here's the thing. You also can't recover any of the input tax you paid on expenses related to that supply.
Okay, hold on. Input tax. It's been a while since my last accounting class. Remind me what that is again.
Basically, it's the VAT you've already paid when buying things for your business. Like, let's say you buy a new printer, that printer has VAT added to the price, right? So that VAT you paid, that's your input tax. Now, usually you can claim that input tax back, but not with exempt supplies.
Got it. So no VAT charged, but you can't get back the VAT you already paid. Okay, makes sense. Now, I'm guessing the UAE VAT law doesn't just randomly decide what's exempt. What are the main categories businesses should be aware of?
You got it. They've laid out four main categories: financial services, residential real estate, bare land, and local passenger transport.
Interesting. I'm sensing a theme here. They're all kind of essential, right?
Exactly. Think of them like the foundation of a strong economy. The
Yeah.
government wants to keep these areas accessible and affordable.
Makes sense. Okay, let's break these categories down one by one. Starting with financial services. Now, when I skimmed through the UAE VAT law, the list of exempt services just seemed endless.
It is pretty extensive, yeah. But it's less about memorizing the whole list and more about understanding the principles behind it. Think of it like this. If a bank offers a basic loan, the interest they earn, exempt. But if they charge a fee for managing your account or for giving you financial advice, those fees, those are taxable.
So it's all about separating the core financial activity from any extras they might tack on.
Exactly.
Ever. Okay, you mentioned something earlier that I have to ask about. Implicit margin.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does that mean?
Good question. It basically means the business's profit is built into the price of the service itself. Like, take currency exchange, for example. They don't usually charge you a separate fee for exchanging money,
Right.
but their profit is built into the exchange rate they give you.
Ah, I see.
So their income is generated through this kind of hidden margin, which is considered exempt.
So it's not just about a fee being charged, it's more about how the business actually makes money.
That's fascinating. And this applies to other financial services, too.
Too many of them, yes. Oh, and this is super important for businesses looking to go global. Exported financial services, meaning those provided to someone outside the UAE, are actually zero rated,
Zero rated.
meaning you can reclaim the input tax you paid. So if you're a business looking to expand internationally, that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, definitely. Okay, let's switch gears to residential real estate. Let's say you're a developer building a new apartment complex in Dubai.
Okay.
Under the UAE VAT law, the sale or lease of residential buildings is generally exempt, as long as it doesn't qualify for zero rating. But there's a little catch with leases.
A catch. Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
So if you're renting an apartment for longer than 6 months, or if your tenant has a UAE ID card, you're good, it's exempt. But here's where people trip up. Temporary accommodations for tourists, like short-term rentals you see on Airbnb, those aren't exempt.
Wait, really? Even though it's still a residential property? That seems kind of counterintuitive.
I know, right? But it all comes down to the purpose of the stay. If someone's renting for less than 6 months and doesn't have a UAE ID, they're considered temporary visitors, and that makes it taxable.
Okay, so it's all in the details. Gotcha. All right, two down, two to go. What about bare land? Sounds pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's as simple as it sounds. Imagine a completely empty plot of land. No buildings, no construction, nothing. That's what's exempt. The idea is to encourage development.
So if you're buying or selling land ready for development, no extra VAT on top. Got it. Finally, local passenger transport. I feel like this one's going to be trickier than it seems.
You're catching on. Okay, think of your everyday commute. Taxis, buses, the metro, even flights within the UAE, all of those are exempt from VAT.
So I can enjoy my commute knowing I'm saving a little on VAT.
Exactly. But There are some nuances. For example, those international flights that connect 2 points within the UAE, even though you're flying within the country, they're technically considered international carriage.
Ah, so it's about the type of flight, not just the location.
Precisely. And here's another one. Let's say you're taking a fancy yacht tour around Dubai for sightseeing, just for fun. Even though you're cruising in UAE waters, that wouldn't be exempt either.
Wait, why not? It's still transportation.
True, but the primary purpose is leisure. Not just getting from point A to point B, it's those little details that make all the difference.
Okay, my head is spinning a little bit.
I know it's a lot to absorb, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover.
That's right. So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll explore even more about these fascinating VI exemptions. Okay, welcome back to our VI exemption extravaganza. We've learned a lot so far, but I have to ask, with all these nuances and exceptions, how can business owners and finance folks like myself make sure they're getting this right?
You're hitting on a really important point there. What we're doing here is just scratching the surface.
Right.
Like, we're giving you the key highlights to get you thinking in the right direction. But the actual UAE VI law, oh man, it's a whole lot more detailed than what we can cover in a single deep dive.
So you're saying we shouldn't just rely on this chat and call it a day?
Definitely not. Think of it like trying to bake a cake using only half the ingredients. You might end up with a big mess.
Okay, I get it. Don't want a VAT cake disaster.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid that? What's the recipe for success?
Due diligence, my friend. Due diligence. First things first, you got to get familiar with the actual UAE VAT law itself.
Uh-oh, I can already feel my eyes glazing over at the thought of reading through all those legal documents.
I hear you. But the good news is the Federal Tax Authority has a really great website that's packed with info. You'll find detailed guides, public clarifications, even FAQs that cover those common questions and scenarios.
Okay, that sounds a little less intimidating than diving into the full legal text. So the Federal Tax Authority website, got it. What else?
And here's a pro tip. If you're dealing with something complex or you're just not sure, talk to a qualified VAT consultant. Think of them as your VAT GPS.
I like that analogy. Always good to have an expert navigating those tricky tax terms for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what is exempt. But what about the flip side? What are some of the common misconceptions that could trip businesses up?
Oh yeah, knowing what doesn't qualify is just as important as knowing what does. One of the biggest traps is thinking that if a supply is even remotely related to an exempt category, it automatically gets a free pass.
Give me an example.
Let's go back to financial services. We talked about how the basic interest on a loan is exempt, right?
Yeah.
But some businesses think that means all income related to lending is automatically exempt.
Ah, so if a bank charges a fee for, say, processing a loan application, that wouldn't necessarily be exempt.
Exactly. That processing fee is a separate service. It doesn't fall under the core exempt activity of lending.
It's all about those subtle distinctions.
Yep, and it touches a lot of people out. Another area with lots of misunderstandings is real estate. We talked about the exemption for residential buildings.
Right.
But just because a building has some residential units doesn't mean the whole thing is automatically exempt.
So like a mixed-use building with shops on the ground floor and apartments above,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be fully exempt.
Exactly. You'd have to break down each part of the building and apply the exemption rules accordingly.
Wow, so you could have a mix of exempt and taxable supplies even within the same building. It's a real puzzle.
It is, and that's why it's so crucial to understand those specific rules for each category.
Yeah.
Don't assume, read the law, and if you're unsure, talk to a VAT expert.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've dug into the mechanics of all of this, but I'm curious about the bigger picture. What kind of impact do these exemptions have on businesses and the UAE economy as a whole?
Great question. The impact is multifaceted. On one hand, they can help lower the cost of living and doing business, which is good for everyone.
I can see how that's especially important for things like healthcare or education.
Absolutely. By exempting certain supplies, the government makes them more affordable and accessible.
But there has to be a downside, right? Like no such thing as a free lunch.
You're right. VAT exemptions have benefits, but there's also a cost. When something's exempt from VAT, the government is essentially missing out on potential revenue.
So it's like a balancing act, making things affordable, but also ensuring the government has the resources it needs.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Okay, so big picture stuff. But I'm sure our listeners want to hear about some real-world examples of all of this in action.
Of course. Let's talk about the real estate sector, specifically residential property.
Ooh, yeah, that's a hot topic here in the UAE.
It is. Now, remember how we said the sale and long-term lease of residential buildings is generally exempt from VAT?
Yeah,
That's had a big impact on making housing more affordable in the UAE.
I can see how that would encourage people to buy or rent homes.
Exactly. And it's also made the UAE property market more attractive for foreign investors, those looking for tax-efficient investments.
So it's not just benefiting residents, it's attracting foreign investment too.
Right. Seems like a win-win. Of course, the real estate market is complex. There are a lot of factors involved, but
Mm.
VA exemptions have definitely played a positive role.
This is all so fascinating. I'm starting to see how it all fits together, how VAT exemptions impact the bigger picture.
And that's exactly what we're going for. Understanding VAT isn't just about filling out forms. It's about seeing those connections and making smart decisions based on them.
We've covered so much ground today, but I have a feeling you've got more VH wisdom to share.
Oh, I've always got more VAT up my sleeve.
Stick around for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up this V8 adventure and answer some burning questions. And we're back for the grand finale of our UAE V8 exemption odyssey.
The final stretch of our desert safari.
Okay, I like that analogy. We've explored the nitty-gritty details, but now I'm craving that big picture view. What's the ultimate takeaway here? What should our listeners, especially those business owners and financial masterminds out there, walk away with?
I think it comes down to three main things. First, knowledge is power, right? The more you understand about these VA exemptions in the UAE, the better decisions you can make for your business.
So crack open that UAE V8 head over to the Federal Tax Authority website. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
Exactly. Second, don't assume anything. VAT is full of little twists and turns. What seems straightforward on the surface could have hidden complexities. Always double check those specific rules.
And if you're still unsure, phone a friend or a VAT consultant.
Always a good idea. And finally, remember that things change. The UAE government is always fine-tuning the system, so staying up to date is super important.
It's like a game with constantly changing rules. Got to stay on top of it.
That's one way to put it. Make it a habit to check for those updates from the Federal Tax Authority. They're your best source for the latest info.
Okay, I'm feeling much more prepared to handle this VAT world now.
Hmm.
But before we wrap up, I have one last question that's been bugging me.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so we've talked about how VAT exemptions can save businesses money, right?
Right.
But are there any bigger, maybe less obvious benefits that we should be thinking about?
You're thinking strategically. I like it. Beyond just saving money, understanding V8 exemptions can really help with a business's overall strategy. Like, it can influence what you sell, where you get your supplies, even how you structure contracts.
So it's not just about paying less VA, it's about using your knowledge of the system to your advantage.
Exactly. It's about making VA a part of your business plan from the beginning, not just an afterthought.
Turning V8 from a burden into a tool, that's pretty powerful.
That's the idea. When you really get it, V8 can open up new doors, help you make smarter choices.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I'm actually feeling a little bit excited about V8 now, which I never thought I'd say.
That's the goal. Remember, knowledge is key. Keep learning, keep asking those questions.
And if you're still feeling a little lost, remember, you don't have to go it alone. There are V8 experts out there who can help.
The V8 heroes, ready to guide you.
All right, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of UAE V8 exemptions. We hope you found it helpful and, hey, maybe even a little fun.
It's been a pleasure.
As always, remember that the information we share today is just for informational purposes. It's not professional advice. If you have specific questions or need some personalized guidance, definitely reach out to a qualified VAT consultant.
Couldn't agree more.
And if you want to keep this conversation going, head over to the comments section, share your thoughts, ask your questions. We'd love to hear from you.
Always love connecting with our listeners.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.